All right, we're live here with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, and good afternoon, and welcome to World Oceans Day. This is another Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants hangout, and we're very excited to introduce our guest speaker, who I'll introduce in a moment. But today's hangouts are all about celebrating our oceans and bringing some of the world's leading scientists, explorers, and conservationists into classrooms to share the wonder of our oceans and why we need to protect them. My name's Travis Steffens. I'm with Planet Madagascar, and I'll be your host for this event. I'm very excited to introduce Grace Young. Grace just returned from exploring mesophotic coral reefs off the Honduran island of Utila. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Mechanical and Ocean Engineering at MIT and is currently a Marshall Scholar and PhD candidate with Oxford University's Ocean Research and Conservation Group. An avid sailor and diver, she's participated in 5 marine expeditions on 4 continents. Her work experience includes helping to design, build, and test submersible and aerial robots that have deployed in the Arctic, Antarctic, Atlantic, and Pacific Oceans. In 2014, she was an aquanaut on Fabien Cousteau's Mission 31, living and working on the ocean floor for 2 weeks in the Aquarius underwater lab. Grace will speak to students today about marine robotics and the future of ocean exploration. That's an amazing CV and a fantastic resume. I'm looking forward to hearing your talk.
Thank you.
And then we also have with us a few different classes. We've got currently Mrs. Blessing's class in Freehold, New Jersey. If you guys can give a big shout out to everyone out there. There we go. Wonderful. And then we got Mrs. Yateman's class. They're coming from all the way in Kingston, Ontario. Big shout out from you guys. And Mrs. Johnson's class that's in Stratford, Ontario. Oh, maybe this might. Wonderful. Okay, great.
That's great.
You can go ahead, Grace.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for your time today, and happy World Oceans Day. Today I'm going to talk about ocean robotics and ocean exploration in general. I'm going to show you all some photos, so I'm going to put that PowerPoint on the screen for a little bit. If there's at all a problem with the PowerPoint, you'll have to like wave and let me know, because I guess I might not hear you since the microphones are off. All right. So one of the most exciting things I've ever done is live underwater with a team of 5 other people. We were living in this habitat called Aquarius. This is a sort of fantastical photo of the habitat. It was only about the size of a yellow school bus, so that's very cozy for the 6 of us. Here's another photo of the habitat too that's, I think, a little bit more realistic. It shows how algae and other marine life have just covered the habitat. The habitat's been underwater already for about 23 years. It's as old as I am. When it was brand new, this is what it looked like. Shiny and yellow, and as you can see, yes, it's changed a lot. It's become one with the underwater landscape. And inside the habitat, it felt like a combination of an RV and a space station. Here is a photo of legendary ocean explorer Sylvia Earle. She's sitting inside the bunk room looking out one of the viewports out into the ocean. You can see all the corals and sponges around the windows too. It's an incredible place. There is me sitting at the coffee table inside the habitat. I'm sitting there with Fabien Cousteau, Jacques Cousteau's grandson, and one of the documentary film producers. So we're wearing red hats too, because this day it was Fabien's grandfather Jacques Cousteau's birthday, if he were still alive, and Jacques Cousteau was a famous French ocean explorer, and Fabien wanted to remember his grandfather's legend by living underwater for just 1 day longer than his grandfather did when he was alive. And that's what we were doing down there, and then Fabien was filming a documentary film about our journey there, so that was a cameraman. He was one of, I think, 3 or 4 different cameramen working with us. Here's a photo from the other side of the window. This is me drinking tea with Fabien. We're sitting at the breakfast / generally all-purpose table working. I really miss the views, being able to look out and see fish and other creatures. It was a remarkable experience. And here's the floor plan for the habitat. So as you can see, it's very cozy. We had our bunk beds here. There were 6 bunk beds, 1 for each of us. We had our kitchen cooking area. We had a microwave. We had a sink, pots and pans for cooking, a refrigerator. There was a toilet, thank goodness, and then the entrance area. Now, a lot of people will ask me how the door worked for the habitat. And this photo, if you look carefully, explains how the door works. This is a photo of the door. The concept is like a bucket flipped upside down and pushed underwater. So if you did that, there would be a pocket of air trapped underneath the bucket, and that pocket of air stays. There's just a boundary of air and water at the bottom of it, and that was our door. So our door was just a kind of a hole in the floor of the habitat, and you could reach a hand down. In this photo, someone from the inside of the habitat is dropping a dive weight down to the diver in the water. You can also see the diver in the water. There's a NASA sticker on his helmet. That is because a lot of astronauts do their training at this habitat. Underwater is a great place to learn how to do difficult tasks and learn how to work in an alien environment. This photo is of me, believe it or not, even though I look like an alien or I look totally different. In order to live outside the habitat, we would wear these hard hats to dive, so that the helmet I'm wearing that surrounds my head with air, and the air is supplied by an umbilical cord that connected to the habitat or to our air tanks on the bottom. And then I also had on my back an emergency small air cylinder. We were wearing fins, we're wearing wetsuits just like normal scuba divers beyond that. Here's another photo with a slightly different dive helmet that had a larger window on it. This is us during dive training, just getting all suited up to prepare for some of our training dives. And this is me on one of our last days on the mission. By this time, I was pretty comfortable in the environment. Oh, I see a new classroom coming in to the discussion. Anyway, a new class. So we're talking about the experience of living underwater. It was incredible. I would do this again in a heartbeat. It was great. Here's another photo that shows just how vibrant the coral reefs are on top of the habitat. The habitat has been underwater, like I said, for 23 years. So there's fish, there's coral. They have all really made that habitat a home. It really is an artificial reef. Now, my background is all in underwater camera systems and underwater engineering. And before I went down, we were working on a camera that takes photos at ultra high speed, which means that we can see events that happen really fast. We can watch them in ultra slow motion. So these 2 photos show a phenomenon that we were observing on the sea floor, where in the photo on the left, you see a mantis shrimp very well camouflaged in the sand. Its body is only about the diameter of a quarter, or a pound coin, is hiding in the sand. And then in a split second later, we saw the mantis shrimp. Here's a video, like moving around in his den, and sand was flying everywhere, although we had no idea what happened in that split second. A normal camera just doesn't capture images fast enough. We wanted to figure out what was happening then. So what we did is we took a high-speed video camera with us underwater. This is a camera that was developed just a few months before we went underwater. We built a custom underwater housing for it. We took it underwater. And this photo is me. I'm the one who's like upside down. And our other aquanaut, Liz, we're in the water setting up the camera. And the camera would sometimes take us 2 or 3 hours to set up, which is why we needed to be living out of the habitat, so we weren't wasting time doing normal scuba diving, returning to the surface every 45 minutes or so. And then once we had the camera set up, we'd have to be very patient waiting for interesting behavior to film. We'd have to wait for the mantis shrimp to feed, for example. And I know the photo looks funny, but the reason why I was upside down is because those dive helmets that we're wearing, they were really heavy. Even in the water, they were 20 or 30 pounds, negatively buoyant. So, and sometimes we'd be in the water for, basically the whole day, like 6, 7, 8 hours. And the pressure on my shoulders got so much. So about every hour I tried to take a break for a minute or two. And it felt really good to let my head rest in the sand like that and legs float up. And it was while I was taking one of those breaks that I spotted that mantis shrimp that we ended up filming. I was looking at a spot in the sand for about 30 seconds before realizing that in that patch of sand was that very well camouflaged mantis shrimp. And here's a closer up detail of that camera that we were using to film the mantis shrimp. The mantis shrimp is just in front of the camera lens in there. And here's what we found. Here's what the mantis shrimp was doing. You have to be patient for it. So there comes a goby, kind of innocent fish. And bam, the mantis leaps out of his den, uses his pincers to grab its prey, and then in its den it will eat the fish for supper. You can also see in the slow motion how his eyes are moving on stalks. Mantis shrimp have some of the best eyesight in the whole animal kingdom. They're really incredible creatures. Here's another video we filmed with the high-speed video camera. This is of a yellow-headed goby poking its head out of his den and spitting sand out of its mouth. It's puking up sand. And it does this, we think, to just clean out its den, keep its den free from debris and other things. Here's another well-camouflaged animal. You have to wait for it. There, bam. So these videos are slowed down, sometimes 200%, because in real time these events are happening just in the blink of an eye underwater. And here's my last video. So one day we decided to leave the camera under the habitat, unattended, just to see what would happen. And as we were watching the screen from inside the habitat, this fish came perfectly in focus in front of the camera. I became very curious to see what we were doing. And all these videos and plenty of other footage we took was all part of a kind of art exhibit we did at MIT several months later. And the art exhibit showed these ultra fast phenomenon going on in slow motion. It's great. Now, the reason we brought that high-speed camera down at first was because there's an unproven theory about the Goliath Grouper fish. So the Goliath Grouper is the fish in this scene. You can see, I think that's me in the hard hat. You can see for scale, this is a giant fish. It can weigh 200 to 300 pounds. And when divers are in the water, if the grouper feeds near them, the divers feel a boom in their chest. And the theory is that this is because as the grouper opens its mouth to feed, it pushes water away so fast that it creates a cavitation bubble inside its mouth. That means it creates a tiny vacuum or a tiny bubble inside its mouth, and that's what creates the boom. But this hasn't been proven yet, and because that happens in the blink of an eye, we thought with a high-speed camera we might be able to see that cavitation bubble form in the grouper's mouth. So the grouper were all around the habitat. There were two that were constantly circling the habitat. Here they are from the window. But we weren't able to film that phenomenon. It turns out. I think you'd really have to get the camera like in the fish Goliath grouper's mouth, which wasn't possible at the time. But that's okay because we got all the other videos. We also did a lot of Skype sessions, so that's how I got connected with the Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants group, which I think is a really great initiative by Joe. We did a Skype lesson at least once a day, sometimes twice a day from underwater in the habitat. Yeah, we had Wi-Fi in the habitat, which is cool. One night we filmed the grouper attacking a barracuda right outside of the window in the habitat. See? Here's a video to show just how surreal the whole thing was. I'm outside, there's a school of fish, and I'm brushing my teeth by the sink. It was great. Now, we were doing a special kind of diving while we were there. It's called saturation diving. On a normal scuba dive, you can only stay underwater for, at that depth, about at 20 meters for about 45 minutes before you need to resurface, so because your body needs to stay acclimated to the 1 atmosphere of pressure. But because we were living in that habitat, our bodies were saturated with one of the gases we breathe called nitrogen. And in order for us to return to the surface, we had to decompress for 18 hours. So here's a photo. I'm in a mask breathing almost pure oxygen on and off. Here's a group of us breathing pure oxygen. And the pressure inside the habitat was slowly raising from 2.5 atmospheres back to 1 atmosphere of pressure. And coming back to the surface was bittersweet. I think we all missed the living underwater. It was a really great experience. One thing I really miss is while sitting at the kitchen table like before bed and talking about all our objectives for the next day and making sure everything was in place for the next day. But of course it was great to be home and have regular food and such. So that was Mission 31. That was one of the most exciting things I've done. I'd go again in a heartbeat. Now, what I do, though, normally is I work on camera systems and underwater robots that help us better understand the ocean. So this slide shows some of the projects I've worked on in the past. One was with Utila Oceanographic Institution. You see a robot being lifted beside a boat. That was a vehicle that went underneath sea ice in the Arctic, and the idea is to build 3D models of the sea ice so that we could better predict climate and weather patterns. And then you see a robot in a pool. That was done at MIT with a group of about a dozen other students. We built this glider so that you could put sensors on it, and it could be used to detect oil or all sorts of other environmental contaminants. Then in the other corner, there's another robot with 2 orange floats and an anchor at the bottom. That was a camera system for the U.S. government that would track fish around Hawaii. So the idea is that this camera system monitored fish and could tell the government how many fish are left in the ocean, better regulate policies. Now, unfortunately, the ocean is changing at a rapid pace right now. So they think the ocean scientists think that the ocean will look profoundly different even in the next just 10 years. The biggest stresses to the ocean are firstly overfishing. So we've overfished 90% of large fish like tuna from the ocean since the 1950s. Another thing is that the chemistry of the ocean is really changing. That's due to the ocean accepting a lot of carbon dioxide, which makes the ocean more acidic, more like vinegar. And also climate change in general is making the ocean a lot warmer. A lot of pollution is dumped in the ocean. I think the statistic, something like a ton of trash gets dumped in the ocean every hour, like a metric ton. It's really ridiculous. But because the ocean is it's out of sight and out of mind to most people, we don't always think about it. And then the last thing I put with a question mark is that some companies are thinking to bring minerals up from the seafloor, which would be very destructive to deep sea ecosystems potentially. So I put that down as another issue. So that's, and then right now at Oxford, I'm working on studying coral reefs and making 3D models of reefs to help us better understand the ocean and understand reefs and shallow ecosystems, which I'm happy to talk about more if you all are interested. But I think now I will open the floor up for questions.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much, Grace. That was really cool. That's I've never met someone who's lived underwater before, so that was really a pleasure. I'm going to go to Mrs. Dowson's class in Stratford. Do you guys have a question for Grace?
Yeah.
Not yet?
Not yet.
Okay, I'll come back to you.
Thank you.
How about Mrs. Yateman's class in Kingston?
Yay. Yay. Yay.
There we go. Hi.
Hi. Did university or your expeditions give you more knowledge and experience?
Oh, great question. Thanks for asking. Yes, definitely. Well, you say which one gave me more experience, or how did they?
Which one gave you more?
Which one gave me more? I always find that doing hands-on research and hands-on expeditions, I learn a lot more from, because if you will, to get something done, you need to learn a lot, and you're searching for the information on your own, and I think it sticks better in your brain that way. That said, I always took my classes in high school and in university really seriously, and I always did well in my classes, and I valued them, but I definitely learn more in expeditions and individual research projects.
All right, thank you.
Is there any other questions from Mrs. Yateman's class?
Yeah, we have one.
Okay. What's the scariest moment you've experienced in your field of work?
My field of work. Yeah, a lot of people ask me if I'm scared about stuff, but I'm not scared to dive or be underwater. I absolutely love diving. I love being in the water, and for Aquarius, we went through weeks of really intense training, like the same kind of training an astronaut might go through. So we were really prepared to deal with any imaginable emergency situation, even in our sleep. That said, there was one night where I was working with the camera, and I was on my own in the water, and we had been working on setting up this camera to film, I think it was the mancha shrimp, one night, and I was just focused so intensely on the scene that was very well lit in front of us, that I didn't realize day had shifted to night, and by the time we were done, I turned off the dive light to wrap up. I realized it was pitch black all around me, and I was alone in the middle of the ocean. Right? That said, I wasn't quite alone. There's our support team being radioed into the helmet, but still. And as soon as I turned off my personal dive light, I showed it over my leg, and a nurse shark just brushed past my leg. Now it was definitely spooked, but everything was okay. That was probably my spookiest moment underwater.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move to another class. I'm going to go to Mrs. Blessing's class. There we go. Do you guys have some questions?
What food did you eat when you were underwater?
Yeah, good question. We ate a lot like astronauts. We had a lot of freeze-dried food because it was easy to store. So one of my favorites was freeze-dried spaghetti, and you looked in the bag and it just looked like powdery mess, but then you put hot water in it and it became like a pretty decent spaghetti dish. Yeah, that said, we had a pizza delivered down to us one day when we were there. Things had to get delivered in kind of like watertight pods that were brought down by Navy divers. That was cool.
Awesome. Miss Blessing class, do you have another question?
What was the weirdest thing you ever found in the water?
Weirdest thing I ever found in the water? Mantis shrimp, I definitely found pretty strange. I mean, I found, like, we do a lot of, the team here, we did a lot of deep dives in Egypt on the Red Sea, and we did dives on what was a really steep underwater cliff. And most people will dive up to like 30 meters or 40 meters, like a bit over 100 feet. But we were doing technical dives. We'd go down to 100 meters or like 330 feet. So we'd often find stuff that people dropped as they were doing shallower dives. Like we found a lot of dive lights and dive masks and dive weights. Every time we found stuff like that, it was kind of, wonder like the story of how it was dropped or who dropped it there. Yeah, I think my favorite thing that I've seen underwater is our eagle rays. They're stunning creatures. They look like magic carpets flying through the water. They're really graceful and really gorgeous.
Great. I'm going to go to another classroom. I'm going to go to Mrs. Slaney's class. I don't know if you guys can hear us.
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. Do you have some questions?
Yes.
Okay.
What made you interested in the ocean?
What made me interested in the ocean? Well, I grew up in Ohio and in Michigan, which people don't really associate with the ocean, but actually we were really close to lakes in both places, so I grew up sailing on the lake or going by the lakeside and being by the water, and I just loved it. I always feel happiest when I'm near the water. And then my family moved to DC, and I would go sailing on the Chesapeake Bay with friends and family. And then I learned to scuba dive with a family friend when I was, I think, 14 or 15 in the Florida Keys, and then I was definitely wanted to work in some space that got me near the ocean. And I got my master's scuba license when I was, I think, 16, which is pretty young. And then in undergrad, I majored in mechanical and ocean engineering, and I'd always volunteer for any dive related stuff. I tried to get near the water as much as I can.
Great. Do you have another question, Mrs. Slaney's class?
When you said people would look, I get minerals. What minerals would they look?
I couldn't hear too well, but did you say what minerals are found under the ocean?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're finding copper, magnesium, zinc, and sulfur underwater, which are really valuable minerals. Gold even they're finding underwater. But they're usually found near hydrothermal vents, which are very unique ecosystems.
That's great. We have, why not one more question, because that was a quick one from Mrs. Slaney's class. Do you have another question?
How did you get back to your place where you were living in? Underwater.
Into the habitat? Oh, I think you guys might have joined after when I talked about the door to the habitat. Did you see that picture? I'm going to show you the photo right now if you didn't see it. Here we go. Did you all see that before?
No.
No? So, yeah, the door is interesting. The concept is like a bucket flipped upside down. So the other class heard this, but if you imagine having a bucket flipping upside down and pushing it underwater, there'd be a pocket of air that's trapped under there, and the habitat was somewhat like that. The air just stayed trapped inside, and then there was a boundary between the air and water at the floor of the habitat. So our door was really just an opening in the floor, and in this photo you can see someone inside the habitat. They're reaching their hand down into the water to give something to a diver in the water. So that's how the door worked. That's how we got in and out every day. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm just going to go to Mrs. Dawson's class to see if they have a question. Do you guys have a questions, Mrs. Dawson's class?
Well, we did. We're just okay. We don't understand how the mineral extraction works?
Pardon me?
Like how the mineral extraction works? How would they do that?
Oh, from the ocean, mineral extraction? The plan right now is for companies to take essentially underwater bulldozers to hydrothermal vents and then bulldoze everything up, and then they'll process out the gold, copper, magnesium, zinc. They'll process that out of the sludge that they bring up from the deep sea. Yeah, the technology, it's not happening yet, so the technology isn't 100% worked out yet, but it's estimated that it'll start happening in a few years now, 2 or 3 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
I think we have a minute, so let's see if Mrs. Yateman's class has another question. Do you guys have another question?
Yes, we're coming.
Go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
Considering you work in the with the oceans yet live on Earth, which environment do you care about more?
Which do I care about more? Oh, they're related. There was a writer who said that, why do we call it planet Earth when clearly it is ocean? I think the two are intertwined relatively. I think a problem, though, is that too many people just care about the Earth, but they forget that the ocean covers 70% of the Earth's surface, and it plays a really crucial role in creating the air we breathe, creating our climate. I care about both, but I focus on the ocean.
Wonderful, thank you. And then what about Mrs. Blessing's class? Do you guys have another question?
No, we were just excused. Our bell just rang.
Great, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thanks all for your time. And if you do have any questions, you can reach out to me through, I think my email's online, the blog contact's online. So, yeah, you're welcome to reach out anytime.
Awesome.
Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another edition of my Secret Pants. And a big thank you to you, Grace, for taking your time to share with us your amazing experiences and all the cool work you're doing with your PhD and your previous work as an undergrad.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for sharing with that, and thanks for doing your part to save the oceans and celebrating that with us on World Oceans Day today with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks you all. Thanks for your time.
Great. Cheers.
Great.